So it's Monday, December 8th. It's day 6 of trial. On Friday, you'll remember that the judge told the jury that everything was running on schedule and they expect this case to only go 2 more weeks. The judge wanted this case to be done before the Christmas holiday, and it looks like that might be possible. But we will see how long it takes to get through the prosecution's case. And then the big question is, if the defendant testifies, how long will he be on the stand? We don't know. Today, we are going to be starting with the witness that we left off with on Friday, which is the medical examiner coroner. And a number of you asked, hey, but they never recovered Ana Walshe, the victim in this case. True, they didn't. But there's a lot that the ME can test that is not just doing an autopsy. And I imagine that that's what we're going to be getting into first thing this morning, is what else the ME can test, what else they can do testing on, because they did recover a lot of things that were soaked in blood and hair and tissue. So today I think is going to be probably a scientific evidences type of day.
Doctor, is this the photographing of the piece of metal that you spoke of?
Yes.
And that envelope, is that the envelope you put it into that's in the photograph?
Yes, it is.
It looks like the loop side is facing down to the bottom of the table where it's being photographed. This is the necklace that I believe that we are talking about. In a lot of her Instagram photos leading up to the time of her death, she is wearing this necklace. It seemed to be the one that she favored. It's been identified as hers in photos that people have identified as her wearing this necklace. So I think that that is where the toggle came from. This necklace was not recovered. The watch was. So the necklace is, I think, pretty identifiable.
Doctor, did you recognize any writing on Exhibit 180?
The bags being way too loud.
Pressed into it.
Yes, there was an engraving of Gucci on one side.
When was the last time you saw Ana Walshe?
It was December. It was the 15th, perhaps. We had a women's event in the office.
And at this event in December, I take it was 2022.
Correct.
Okay. And what was her demeanor like at this event?
Normal, happy, social.
And did you see any injuries on Ms. Walshe when you were with her that night or that day at the women's event?
No.
Now, when did you first learn that Ana Walshe was missing?
January 4th.
And how were you alerted that Ms. Walshe was missing?
A coworker came over to let me know that her husband had called the crossing team looking for her.
So with this information, what did you do to try and with this information, what did you decide to do?
I said, I'll reach out to him. Do you have a phone number?
Okay. And what was the name of the person you tried to reach out to?
Brian Walshe.
Now, where did you go to try and reach out to him? Did you call him from your office?
I called him from my cell phone.
Okay.
So I called, I introduced myself. I let him know who I was. And I just said how, I understand you're looking for Ana. Like, how can we help?
Okay. And what did he tell you?
He said, so I talked to him multiple times that day.
Certainly.
So I believe in our first conversation.
It would be incredibly difficult to parse out what happened in what conversation years later after a stressful situation. It would be very difficult not to conflate what happened in each phone call.
He stated he hasn't seen Ana since the 1st or New Year's Day. And he was looking for her and wanted to see if any of us had heard from her. And he specifically said, we have only gone 24 hours or more without seeing each other once. And the last time she was, I'm paraphrasing, but annoyed with me for, looking for her too soon.
Okay.
Essentially.
Now, he said he was looking for it. Did he say why he was looking for her in Washington?
Yes. He had said that there was a building emergency that she was called back for.
Were there any building emergencies in Washington, D.C. for the properties that Ana was managing at this point in time in January of 2023?
January of 2020, that date?
Well, between January 1st and January 4th of 2023.
Was she
I
called?
can confirm. On
Was she called back for a building emergency? Just ask that question.
January 1st, there was not.
Okay.
I'm not sure about
All right.
second, third, fourth.
So, but there were no emergencies on January 1st.
Correct.
Okay. Now, you're having this conversation with him. Do you offer to do anything during this conversation to help?
Yes.
What did you offer?
I had stated, Ana had shared with me where she lives, and it's not too far from my home. I'm happy to go by and just check to make sure she hasn't fallen.
Now, what
Right.
was his demeanor like during this first conversation?
He was polite and calm and nice.
And how long was the conversation?
A few minutes.
And after the conversation was over and you had made this offer, what did you do?
A coworker, the one who originally told me about the phone call from the crossing team, offered to drive up with me to the house. And so we did that.
During the conversation with Mr. Walshe, this first one, did you ask him anything about Ana's mental health?
I did.
And what did you ask?
I asked if she had any mental health issues.
And what did he say?
He said, no, we just had a lovely holiday, New Year's with friends.
So I take it at this point in time, you and the coworker went to Ana's home.
Correct.
When you got to Ms. Walsh's home, what did it look like from the outside? What observations did you make?
Sure.
Normal.
It's a townhome.
Yes.
And so there were steps up to the front entrance. And so if you walk up the steps and you look on the left-hand side, there was a Nespresso box that was out and it was wet.
Okay. So there was a wet Nespresso box, and
Like a delivery, right?
had it rained recently? Or what's this?
Yeah,
What would have affected? What was the issue of the wet Nespresso box?
On Monday and Tuesday it had rained, but on Wednesday it had not. So that led me to believe Ana had not been out of her home.
Okay. So,
that day or before.
And I'm sorry I interrupted you.
At the morning break, we finished the testimony with the medical examiner who talked about what they preserved from the cut pieces of carpet that they observed. And we saw that they recovered a toggle from a necklace that was engraved with the word Gucci on it. I think that is probably from the Gucci necklace we saw Ana wearing quite a lot in her Instagram leading up to the date of her death. And we've seen that picture admitted into evidence last week. And then we got into the cross-examination. The defense asked a lot of questions about sudden and unexplained deaths, and the coroner or ME tried to reiterate in his responses that most of those things are answered during autopsy. They don't remain unexplained if there is an autopsy. And then he talked about deaths being unexpected or sudden, and the coroner was like, well, lots of deaths are sudden and unexpected. So really, we didn't see that there was anything that the coroner tested. They observed the carpet, they preserved things, and then those things were sent presumably to the crime lab, because we heard from the witness that picked things up from the ME's office and drove it to the crime lab. We haven't gotten into all of that scientific testing yet, because the next witness was Theresa Marchese, who was the HR director for Tishman Speyer, Ana Walshe's company, who talked about the conversation she had with Brian Walshe on the 4th and briefly on the 5th before not speaking to him anymore. Talked about seeing Ana Walshe for the last time in December, and then talked about the day of the 4th going to Ana Walshe's residents observing that there was a Nespresso box. I took it to mean like a delivery that was at the front that was wet. And she indicated that it had rained in the days prior, but had not rained the day that she was observing things. So it indicated to her that Ana had not been home in several days. We know now that Ana never returned to DC after going home for New Year's. But at this time, Tishman Speyer was still trying to assist Brian Walshe in looking for Ana and asked him, along with their head of global security, asked Brian Walshe about the make and model of her car. If her car had, they called it something else than a fast pass, but if their car had like a fast pass, if he had called hospitals, if he had made police reports. They had someone from work calling hospitals locally in DC. And then we know that the global head of security also called law enforcement. I'm sure we'll hear from him later, but we have not gotten there yet. So we just finished up with that witness. The defense asked a lot of questions from the coroner of people moving and or talking after death. I'm interested to see where the defense goes with that, and asked a lot of questions of HR about when somebody would get a bonus from work and how employees are evaluated, and if the residents of an apartment building that was managed by Tishman Speyer and by Ana, the Crossing, if they were complaining about Ana's performance. But on redirect, we heard the prosecution ask, and the answers were that Ana was a good employee, that she had received bonuses, and that though there were resident complaints at the Crossing, where there was also apparently a Legionnaires outbreak, that those didn't impact her employment. It looks to me when he's leaning over that he's trying to see the amount of the transaction without getting in front of the camera that literally scans your face. It looks like he walks out of the line of sight of the camera to me, and then goes back to try to look at the cost. He saw himself on camera and backed up and away and then kind of craned over from the side, because you can see his head show up in that video. And then he pays in cash. The defense has been no cross-examining the last several witnesses, who have all been essentially the keeper of records for a variety of different retail establishments, including Lowe's and CVS and Walgreens. And we have seen how crystal clear the videos are from those locations. He bought at Walgreens Band-Aids and like antiseptic cream. He went to the liquor store that he frequented, that people were familiar with him from, on New Year's Day, and took a black trash bag and threw it into their dumpster, even though the liquor store was closed. It looked like he was doing something in the car before that. At one point, you can clearly see that he puts on a black face mask before he goes to that dumpster. He might have also been putting on gloves, because when he goes into Lowe's, he is in gloves that look like the same ones that were recovered out of the front compartment in the car when the car was processed. And then he goes into Lowe's with the mask on and the gloves on. At Lowe's, he purchases the things that we have heard about in other receipts, including the hacksaw, 5 large buckets, a mop replacements, the Tyvek suit, lots and lots and lots of towels. And he also goes to CVS and buys quite a bit of hydrogen peroxide. So in some of those transactions, he uses his credit card. Well, when he buys the Band-Aids, when he goes to Lowe's and CVS, he is using cash. And I wonder if he thinks that it will be harder to track his transactions using cash. Again, consciousness that he is going to be doing nefarious things. I'm sure the defense will argue that, yes, he was disposing of the victim, but he did not kill her, because that seems to be what their argument is. But he did have a list in his hand when he was going around Lowe's, and we did see quite a lot of Googling in the early morning hours of January 1st. So it seemed that he used those Googles to go and purchase all of the things. We do not know what was in and what was dumped in the dumpster at the liquor store, but I have speculation. I am wondering what the prosecution might think, and if we'll see that in closing, because what was dumped on New Year's Day at the liquor store was a smaller trash bag than what we saw in other surveillance video being dumped, but that was not recovered. So what could he have dumped there? There's a lot of options of things he could have dumped before he went and purchased the other things at Lowe's. Most notable to me as a takeaway really is the timing of the Band-Aids. And while the other things are a little bit more horrific, we know that those were recovered, but he was Googling how to clean blood and DNA off of a knife. And it seems that there is a reasonable discernment to be made that he had cut his thumb that looked like it was sliced by a sharp edge before he went and got the snips and the hacksaw and what have you, because he was buying Band-Aids before that. So I think there's an argument that if he was Googling all those things about a knife, that perhaps a knife was used and that the victim did not die naturally in her sleep, which is why there was so much blood on the carpet and what have you. So I think that we will hear more argument about what was disposed of, even though we don't know. The jury is allowed to make reasonable inferences from the evidence. The cut to the finger is going to be one of the things that the jury is allowed to think about as to whether or not the defendant committed this murder or not. Seeing him buying all of the things that we know that he uses to dismember his wife is really chilling stuff. And it's not a graphic video. It's just a video of somebody walking around Lowe's. But we know what happens next. And what we know that the jury doesn't know is that he pled guilty to that. But if she had died of natural causes, then I don't know if we would have seen blood in the master bedroom down into the subfloor, which we haven't gotten to in this trial yet. But I talked about it in the podcast about the lawsuit with Brian Walshe's mother, because there was more information from the landlord of the home where Ana Walshe died charitably. There was more information in that lawsuit where the landlord sues the mother. The defense is saying that she died of natural causes, and then he tried to dispose of her without being too horrendous. If that was the case, and you have a basement, wouldn't you just take her into the basement? Why would there be so much blood in the bedroom then if she died of natural causes? I have a lot of questions. Law Nerd, it is the time of year where you have a lot on your plate. I know I do, which is why I love bringing you sponsors that make life easier. And one of the things that's going to make your life a lot easier is not worrying about all these data breaches. I know there's new ones every time you listen to me talk about today's sponsor, Incogni, but it's not just companies being targeted, because Harvard just had a massive data breach that impacts both alumni and current students, and that was a phone phishing attack where people are just getting called up. It's time to get Incogni so that you can get back control of your data that's on the internet. Once you sign up with Incogni, they go and take down and remove your personal data from multiple sites, and they have automated that for hundreds of these data brokers. But if you need more, Incogni also offers custom removal features where you can send them a link and then get a dedicated privacy expert to get that information taken down. And remember, Incogni is available risk-free for 30 days. That means you can try it out for yourself. And if you aren't happy for any reason, you can get a full refund. We love the family plan, but Incogni has a wide variety of annual plans. And of course, we've got a discount for you. So if you're ready to take back your personal data, it's time to get Incogni. Go to incogni.com/Emily and use code Emily to get 60% off of annual plans. You heard me right, 60% off of annual plans. Now is the time to do the adulting and get Incogni. Let's get back to today's episode.
And then you I keep saying that. Did you ask that the flooring be removed?
No.
Okay, someone else did that.
Correct.
But then after that flooring was removed, you went up and examined that area where the flooring had been.
Correct.
Now there is a reason, isn't there?
It wasn't just white residue though. The varnish was also off of the floor.
Why someone decided to remove that floor? There's a reason for that, right?
Yes.
And the reason would be because they were looking to see if there was biological evidence that had deposited itself between the spaces between the wood flooring planks, correct?
Yes.
And that is a common thing that you have seen in your examination of flooring, that something like fluid blood or fluid biological, some other substance,
Yes.
goes between the crevices or where the flooring butts up against each other, correct?
Yes.
I mean, unless there's a tarp.
When the
Didn't realize how
flooring is
dark it
then
had gotten.
pulled up,
Sorry, y'all.
now what you're looking
I had to
for
turn
is
my
to
lights
see
back
if
on.
any of the biological fluid had deposited itself not only in the joints between the flooring planks, but then back on the subfloor where the flooring planks lay, correct?
Yes.
And after a thorough examination, after all of those flooring planks were dug up on that floor, you didn't find any evidence whatsoever of any biological substance that tested positive for blood.
Correct.
And you didn't find any evidence of biological substance that
Which
tested
surprises
for anything
me.
else up there after they ripped out that floor, correct?
Correct.
There is nothing in the examination of that bedroom that indicates that any biological substance whatsoever had been deposited on the floor, is it?
Yes, that is correct.
We went through quite a lot of evidence today. We saw a whole bunch of videos from different retail establishments showing things that the defendant was purchasing. And then we started getting into the scientific processing of the house. And we are in cross-examination of the Commonwealth's witness number 31, Matthew Sheehan, who went through and not only did crime scene response, so he swabbed things at the location, but he also did some of the testing and presumptive testing for blood back at the lab and then preserved different things to be sent out for DNA. So the evidence that they covered with that witness today were things recovered from the home, things recovered from the dumpster as well. So we went through numerous things. Interesting to me is that there was a kitchen knife up above the refrigerator in a cabinet, the same cabinet that had a lot of those bottles of hydrogen peroxide we had seen him purchasing, presumably earlier in testimony, because they looked exactly the same to me. And the knife was in incredibly rough shape. The knife, I don't know if it had been bleached or soaked or heat blasted or all of the above or hydrogen peroxide or whatever, but the knife was in really rough looking shape. I don't know if we're going to see if there was a knife set in the home and if it looked different than the knife that was recovered from above the refrigerator, but that knife looked rough. We also saw the testing and know that they tested the gray larger pair of slippers, and they tested the inside of those and the outside of those for blood, but also to see who's wearing them. That's the same with the Tyvek suit and others. So there was a lot of things that were tested that were presumptive for blood, some that were presumptive for blood but didn't test positive for blood. They explained why that would be because of the chemical that they use to see if an area is positive for blood can then cause it to not test positive for blood. So then they send it out to the DNA section to test for DNA. So we are going to see more of that. But we saw all of those pieces of carpet that were cut up and disposed of. We saw testing of those, but the slippers are just heartbreaking. We also saw that they pulled out of groups of hair, certain hairs, and had those established as presumptive for human versus for animal. And then I think we will get to the DNA evidence probably tomorrow with who did the testing for that, because it was not this witness that did it. Surprising to me was that when they pulled up the flooring to get into the subflooring in the bedroom, they did not find any evidence of blood. I had thought from reading the civil lawsuit that we went over in the podcast today that they might have found blood evidence when they pulled up the flooring to get into the subflooring, but they say that they didn't. So I'm very curious to hear more about that. I don't know if we will or won't, but what we did hear about the flooring is that most of the floor was quite shiny and clean, but then there was one area of flooring that had like a white cast to it, and that the varnish had been worn off. And that's really what the defense is focusing on. The defense in cross has begun focusing on, but there was nothing presumptive for blood in the bedroom. There was nothing presumptive from blood here or there. And so the defense, again, has been really strategic in focusing on moving the needle where they can and leaving the rest of it alone, and trying to say nothing happened in the bedroom. I think they're going to argue that she passed naturally in the bedroom because that's what they said in opening statements, but nothing happened in the bedroom because that big swath of floor that was cleaned, like to the point that the varnish was gone, seems maybe a bit odd, especially after he was Googling things like how to remove blood from wood flooring. So I think we will see the prosecution argue a little bit more about the bedroom. But again, this jury is going to have to decide if this was a first-degree premeditated murder or if this was just the dismemberment and the disposal of the body. So we will see when we get to those questions later on, because the things he did after might give us a peek into what he was thinking, like the Google search, can you be charged for murder if there's no body? So maybe we will see more about that, but I'm interested to see what the DNA results are. I will not be surprised if the DNA show that the very bloody slippers were his, that he was wearing, same with the Tyvek suit and more. So with that, the judge has still not formally ruled on whether or not the jury will know about the guilty plea. But again, she was asking the defense for more information in a written response. And it seemed that the judge was leaning towards keeping that information out of this trial because it does not go to a question that the jury has to answer. The jury is the finder of fact. There are no facts that they have to find with regard to whether he disposed of the victim. That's already off the table. They don't have to decide if he lied. A lot of this evidence also goes to things like consciousness of guilt, to show how he was acting, to show what he was doing. But the jury doesn't have to decide whether or not he did those things, just the first-degree murder. Thanks for joining me. If you enjoyed this episode and don't want to miss updates on your favorite cases, you're going to need the Law Nerd app at lawnerdapp.com. That way you can stay in the loop on the cases that matter most to you, and you never know when you're going to catch feelings for a new case. So make sure you get it for free on iOS and Android. Thank you for being here, and thank you for being a Law Nerd.